In the heart of Victorian London, a young man makes a wish, one that will grant him eternal youth but condemn his soul. This is the story of The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Dorian Gray, a young and strikingly beautiful man, becomes the muse of painter Basil Hallward. Basil believes Dorian's beauty is unmatched and immortalizes him in a stunning portrait. He sees Dorian as a symbol of artistic perfection, an embodiment of beauty that transcends time. But when Dorian meets Lord Henry Wotton, a charming yet cynical aristocrat, he is introduced to a hedonistic worldview. Lord Henry persuades him that youth and beauty are the only things worth having in life. Stricken with fear at the thought of losing his beauty, Dorian makes a desperate wish: that his portrait should age while he remains forever young. At that moment, something in him shifts, though he does not yet realize the consequences of his wish. At first, life is indulgent and intoxicating. Dorian becomes obsessed with experiencing every pleasure life has to offer. He falls in love with Sybil Vane, a talented actress who performs in a shabby theater. She sees him as her prince, but her love blinds her. She can no longer act with passion, for real love has eclipsed fiction. Her performance falters, and Dorian, embarrassed before his friends, cruelly rejects her, telling her she is nothing without her art. That night, Sybil takes her own life. Dorian is shaken, but when Lord Henry convinces him that her death is merely an artistic tragedy, he pushes away his guilt. Later, he glances at the portrait and notices something unsettling. A hint of cruelty lingers in the painted expression. A tiny shift in the mouth, a slight hardness around the eyes. It is as if the portrait itself is reflecting his soul's corruption. Years pass, and Dorian plunges deeper into excess and corruption. He frequents opium dens, manipulates those around him, and leaves a trail of ruined reputations. His beauty remains, but inside his soul withers. The portrait, hidden in his attic, reveals the truth, its face twisted with every act of wickedness, its hands stained with unseen blood. Rumors swirl about him. His acquaintances wither while he stays young. Those who come too close to the truth either distance themselves or meet tragic ends. He experiments with all forms of pleasure, seducing young men, breaking engagements, and tarnishing reputations with his influence. Dorian becomes a whispered legend of London's elite, a man who does not age but carries an aura of something unnatural, something deeply unsettling. Haunted by whispers of his past, he grows paranoid. At every party, every gathering, he feels the weight of unseen eyes. He becomes obsessed with his portrait, visiting it more frequently, watching its transformation with horror and fascination. The grotesque face sneers at him, mocking his hypocrisy. He wonders, has he sold his soul to the devil without realizing it? But when Basil Hallward visits him, urging him to change, Dorian snaps. In a moment of rage, he unveils the grotesque portrait. The artist, horrified, begs him to repent. Instead, Dorian murders him in cold blood, stabbing him repeatedly in the dim glow of the attic, where the cursed painting rests. Blood seeps into the wooden floor, but no stain appears on Dorian's hands. To cover his crime, Dorian blackmails an old friend, Alan Campbell, into disposing of the body. The guilt of this act drives Alan to take his own life. Meanwhile, Dorian feels haunted by shadows of his past, particularly by Sybil's brother, James Vane, who seeks vengeance for his sister. One night, James nearly takes his life, but he hesitates when Dorian appears as youthful as ever, convinced that such a young man could not have known Sybil years ago. Dorian's paranoia worsens. He avoids mirrors, fearing they will betray the unnatural truth of his existence. He distances himself from society, yet he cannot escape his own mind. At night he hears whispers. Are they real or merely echoes of his guilt? He walks the halls of his mansion, feeling unseen presences lurking in the dark. Later, James Vane is accidentally shot during a hunting trip. Dorian believes himself free from consequences once again. He attends lavish parties, drinking in the admiration of others. But the pleasure feels hollow. The laughter around him rings false. He wonders, has he truly won? Or has he become nothing more than an empty shell? Yet something gnaws at him. He tries to live a virtuous life, making small gestures of goodness, but the portrait remains hideous. He realizes that his attempts at morality are merely self-serving, a way to soothe his guilt rather than truly change. The painting does not forgive, it does not forget. Desperate to erase his sins, he seizes a knife and slashes the canvas. A final, chilling scream fills the house. Servants rush in and find an old, withered man lying dead on the floor. Unrecognizable. The once hideous portrait has reverted to its original beauty. In the end, Dorian's soul could not be hidden forever. The portrait had told the truth, even when he could not face it himself. Dorian Gray sought eternal youth, but in the end he discovered that the soul cannot escape its fate. The portrait told the truth, even when he could not. It bore the weight of his sins, his vanity, and his corruption, while Dorian himself remained a hollow shell of beauty. In the end, the portrait was his soul, and in destroying it, he destroyed himself. The picture of Dorian Gray is a timeless reminder that true beauty lies not in appearance, but in the purity of the heart, and that no one can outrun the consequences of their choices. What do you think? Was Dorian a victim of temptation or the architect of his own downfall? Comment below. And if you love dark stories, subscribe for more haunting book summaries.